because there are some game studios that have raised up to, $5 million, $10 million. But this is not among the new wave of studios. These are studios that have spent like more than a decade. Most of them have spent more than a decade, and they're kind of like the big guys, right? These are the things that have happened in this space. And we're looking to bridge that gap. We're looking to get people to, understand what it's like investing in the sector, understand what it's like working with the stakeholders, because games are very unique in the fact that you can build long-lasting IP as opposed to many other forms of medium.
Hello, one and all, and welcome to the Afribond Sessions, the show where we talk about the latest trends and topics shaping Africa and the African diaspora today. I'm your host, TJ Omojomolo, and a quick housekeeping note before we start. As you can see, we're now in video form on YouTube, and a massive thank you to our audio listeners. We want to continue to grow and reach more people, so we thought what better way to do this by launching our YouTube channel. So we hope to see more of you on our YouTube, and a massive thank you to our listeners already. But on to the show, we do have a great guest today, and the episode will revolve around gaming with our guest, Oscar Esio. Oscar's the founder of Africacomicade. It's a platform that brings together gamers, game developers, creators, stakeholders in gaming across Africa. Now, for those who don't know, I've always loved gaming and consider myself a bit of a nerd, and I'm always interested in the gaming industry. And relative to other forms of media, such as TV and film, it's still a relatively nascent industry, gaming. And you've got massive behemoths like GTA and Call of Duty outperforming various films, music, and TV shows. And for that reason, I think there's great potential in gaming for Africa. And that led me to interviewing Oscar. So we talk about a plethora of different things, including the current gaming platforms and also the exciting potential of investors when it comes to them allocating capital to game studios, and the projections that he sees for games and what he does when it comes to helping gaming publishers. So without further ado, let's jump into it. And we're back with Oscar. Oscar, how are you doing? Thanks for jumping on. How's things?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. No, it's I've always wanted to do this. As people, a lot of my friends and colleagues know, I love gaming. So if I can blend gaming and investment and the work that people do in Africa towards it, that is awesome. And how we usually start, it's about yourselves. We always talk about the guests, so it'd be great if you can just talk about the roles that you're doing and also your experience and what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Hello, everyone. My name is Oscar. I am the founder of Africacomicade. And Africacomicade is a launchpad for stakeholders in the African video games, immersive and interactive media industry. So that's video games, animation, comics, and XR. And what we do is we spotlight the industry. It's an emerging industry, a very niche one. Not a lot of people know that it exists. Not a lot of people know that there are African game studios building games, servicing global game studios from the continent. So we spotlight the stakeholders, and then we connect them to opportunities for learning, for co-production, collaboration, exchange programs, funding, and more. Myself, I've been in the industry for over a decade. I started off as a very passionate game developer, right? Building games, teaching youths how to build games, running and organizing game jams, building community. But very quickly, I transitioned into entrepreneurship because I realized the business side was missing. And as much as I hated it, without business, the industry was going nowhere. And that took me on a different journey into software entrepreneurship, after which I came back to games and started Africacomicade with my amazing co-founders. Yeah.
Amazing. No, amazing work. And it's like you said, the business side isn't often talked about in video games, so highly important what you're doing. And I guess the first question I could ask, because I'm very interested in maybe the gaming infrastructure and how developers work. So for those who don't know, a lot of the big game industry companies include Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft. Nintendo make, for instance, the Switch 2. Sony make the PlayStation 5. That's a native integration. Xbox. I think it's the Xbox One, but the branding I always forget which one it's called at the moment. But they've got one too. And a lot of the games are console games. There's also PC gaming too. It's mobile gaming as well. Based on the infrastructure in terms of what the audience has access to in Africa and maybe around the world, what are the type of games that you are seeing that the developers are making across Africa or they're assisting to?
Yeah. Um, well, everyone you ask who has insight into the market will let you know that Africa is a mobile first market, right?
Mm.
We do have the youngest growing population, the youngest and fastest growing population. And but the reality is, I don't like saying this out there, but the
Mm.
disposable income on the majority of that percentage is very low, right? Not a lot of people have access to Xbox or PS5 or the likes or handhelds. There are people, there's a good number, but when you look at the percentage to the population, it's very small. What everyone has access to is a mobile phone, a mobile device, and that is where
Mm.
most people are playing games on. All right. Almost everybody has one form of game or the other on their mobile device. And when you even look at competitive gaming, that's on the esports side, that is also clearly reflected. Where if you want, if you're looking for esport athletes in PC gaming, you won't be able to find as much people as when you look at the mobile gaming side, right? That's why Call of Duty Mobile is very huge on this side of the continent. Free Fire is super huge. PUBG is huge because everybody is gaming, but a large percentage of those gamers are gaming on their smartphones.
No, it makes sense, and not only in Africa, you see that there was that trend, especially in the late 2010s and also the early 2010s of mobile gaming being big in the West. You see it in Asia, of course, in China, South Korea, mobile gaming is huge. For
Yeah,
instance, one of my favorite games, Horizon, they recently announced a mobile version which they're marketing for South Korea. And based on that, you said a few games, one of the biggest games, Call of Duty, one of the biggest franchises then. So when you're talking to these developers, I'm interested in the type of games that are being created.
yeah,
Are they more, I'll class them, and maybe someone might say this is mean, but mini games like Angry Birds, Candy Crush,
yeah.
are those the type of games that are being developed? Or is it more those fully fledged games? Obviously, Call of Duty is big, but maybe those shooter games, those games that you can maybe convert one day into a console. I know they won't as it's more about, but those bigger flagship games.
Yeah. So it's a mix. It's a huge mix. In the last 5 years, there was a mix. So before
Mm.
now, due to cost of development and the likes, a lot of people were strictly focused on mobile games. Also looking at the fact that a lot of the stakeholders were also targeting the African market. So it made logical sense. You want to promote African storytelling. You want Africans to play your games. The medium accessible to them is the mobile device. So you'll find a lot more people building for mobile devices. Also, the turnaround time and development for mobile is much more shorter than with PC games. So across the continent, there's even been several incubators like the one of the Crazy Labs incubator done in partnership with Carry First that was strictly focused on mobile. Carry First itself is mainly publishing mobile games, not PC. And a lot of stakeholders, like I mentioned, looking at the resource available for development, you're rather going to mobile. There were also some, there were also some infrastructural challenges, like say, for example, in Nigeria, publishing a PC game was very, very difficult. We could not just easily upload our games to Steam like our colleagues in Kenya, in East Africa, or other parts, because there was like a ban on Nigerian developers. But then came should I call it the Renaissance? Yeah.
And I suppose you what was the reason for the ban? What happened there?
Well, the how do I put it? The unofficial reason is mainly due to, like, corruption. Just the way Paystack as well was like, okay, Nigerians chill. You guys are doing a lot. So there are probably some malware uploaded as games onto the Steam platform from this side. But a much more logical reason given by the Steam team itself has had to do with verification. Steam is a US company. They follow all the rules there. And so if you want to upload, there are certain documents that need to be uploaded. You would also need to be verified. And back then and even now greatly, um, the systems in Nigeria are not very integrated with the system the Steam partnership team follows in verifying businesses. So there are people that verify all your details, your tax record and all. When it comes to Nigeria, it's not a smooth flow. There's still a lot of manual processing. And so the Steam team cannot heavily invest on making that process seamless as opposed to other African countries. So, but what they do is they then work with stakeholders like ourselves. So in the last 5 years, we've gotten to work with the Steam team directly. And we've also seen stakeholders like the Games Industry Africa provide that same service where they help the Steam team in validating, verifying the game developers from Nigeria and helping them get onboarded onto the platform. Yeah.
Amazing. No, that's amazing. And you're breaking down those barriers, allowing those developers to go into Steam.
Yeah.
That's how many jobs maybe have you helped as a result and give people access to new games.
Yeah.
So no credit to you.
Definitely, definitely. And over the years, I think more than 5 Nigerian games have also been able to get onboarded to Steam. It's also because of where the industry is, right? Some of these documents, most of these developers are very indie. When I say very indie, I mean like a one-man team, not registered, no tax record, no business registration. And so it can really get difficult. Some people have been able to circumvent that by providing all of these documents, but some are unable to and still need extra support. And we look forward to that future where this would be really seamless, where you don't have to know somebody to get onboarded, because other regions, they just, submit the documents and it goes through and it it removes those hurdles. It doesn't look like there are gatekeepers in the sector, right? Because we don't want that kind of thing where you have to know Oscar or you have to know someone to get on board Steam. But things are getting better, even in Nigeria. The systems, I mean, there's a new tax reform that is making every creative go crazy. But this would also help us in integrating with businesses outside the continent as everything becomes more and more centralized, and it would help promote business. So in the last 5 years, we've seen more studios going to PC game development. These can be due to the fact that thanks to COVID, there was more exposure. In the past, if you're a Nigerian game developer, you were limited to the Nigerian games ecosystem. And then it's either you just go online and join those groups and you speak there, right? But during COVID, there was more, it was just beyond commenting. People were really connecting across the continent, across the globe. People were exchanging. And so their eyes got open to possibilities of what they can do. Also, stakeholders like Unreal Engine, Epic Games launched the Epic Grants, and that made everybody go like crazy, like, hey.
Yeah.
So with that funding, with the availability of that funding, people were now able to, push their limits to say, let me build a PC game. There was the Epic Grants, there was the Games Industry Africa Prototype Fund, which gave up to $10,000, $15,000 to indie game studios. These were the kind of incentives that push people to say, you know what, instead of trying to build something in 6 months, perhaps I can go further and spend a year, 2 extra building my vision. And with that, we started seeing more and more PC titles. Sadly, a lot are still not finished. The disadvantages of PC game development, more mobile games that started in the late 2020s have been completed than the PC games that started.
Yeah, of course. That's the thing about gaming recently. It takes so long sometimes, especially when you're talking about PC or console gaming, to develop the game. It's sometimes you'll see a trailer for a game and then you don't see it again for years and years, and sometimes it's even cancelled.
Yeah.
And for all those who don't know, who are maybe new to gaming, Epic Games are the people that created Fortnite. I'm
Yeah.
sure your kids have maybe played Fortnite before. It's one of the biggest games in the world, and they have made billions from it, not millions, billions. So
Yep.
they do have the money to provide a lot of grants, a lot of subsidies to potential providers, which is great work too. And leading on to that, like you said, the grants are great. And I wanted also to talk about, you mentioned how people are supporting and extra support is maybe needed for these publishers and gaming developers. The question I'd have then is maybe the aim for them, because we see a lot of developers that are being maybe taken over or acquired by bigger publishers in Europe, in Asia. Do you think that is something that is feasible for these gaming developers? For instance, they make an amazing game. A bigger developer sees it, whether it's a first-party developer or third-party developer, and
Yeah.
then eventually it can be acquired and they have even a bigger audience across the world. How feasible is that? And is there any developer on their way to doing that?
Yes, we actually have success stories with that. It's very feasible. It's something we are aiming to see more and more of, right? Um, it's just a shame that there's not a lot of investment going into this sector, and that's understandable because a lot of stakeholders, investors don't understand this sector. Ideally, the games industry gets its investment from people called publishers mostly, because traditional tech startup investors, the ideology behind tech startup is different. They want you to scale, scale, scale till you can exit. That's not the way games work. And the way games monetize their project, it's not the same. It's not like subscriptions. So even our financial models are very much different. And a lot of VCs are like, okay, this is not making sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what is also exciting is, games sit at the intersection of deep tech as well as creativity. And when you're looking at investors for game studios, they're not just looking for who's going to drop the money. It's just like in movie and music. The investors bring something extra, which is distribution, which is the biggest problem. You've built something great. Do you have the reach? Can you reach out to the stakeholders that would play this game? And that's where the funding comes in. That's where the network comes in for your marketing budget, for your promotion. So they are called publishers. And we've gotten a lot of support, to be quite fair. When you look at the African video games industry, a lot of support have come from civil organizations run by the department, the creative and cultural department of several embassies. Some of the main ones being the Goethe Institute, the Alliance Française, right, the French embassy, as well as the British Council, and even the I think Pro FT as well. That's for Switzerland, if I'm not wrong. So these are the kind of stakeholders that have traditionally supported it because they are very much interested in the creative industry. And if you look at these people, they also have established games markets. So they understand it. Whereas here on the continent, we're still trying to educate stakeholders that gaming is different from gambling. So that is one big issue because the gambling guys were way ahead of us and they went to register themselves as gaming. So right now, even in Nigeria, for example, a lot of the game studios have to register themselves as startups or media houses because once you put gaming in your registration, then you immediately have to pay a license of about 50 million to 100 million naira. And then there's some unique tax coming to you because they think you're a gambler. And then on the corporate side, we have seen stakeholders like Xbox publish games. All right. Xbox has provided a lot of funding for the industry. I think it's not been spoken of well enough. For example, through the idea at Xbox, they have the fund for indie developers across the continent. And they've invested in more than 3 African studios, giving up to $75,000 plus to build their games, which are meant to come on Xbox. Yeah.
Right.
Google has also supported heavily in terms of training. Google has worked with organizations like ourselves, Africacomicade, and even Malio to train thousands of people. Malio has trained Google supported them to train thousands of people in game development. And Google has also provided support directly to developers. And beyond financial support, they also do these things where they like spotlight the games so that they can get more visibility and downloads, like App of the Month, featured apps. Google has done that. Apple has done that as well. So these stakeholders have also supported the sector. And then for investors themselves, there's been quite some investments. I think the reason why there's not a craze for investing in the games industry is because a lot of the people who have been invested in have perhaps not been able to, clearly show that ROI, right, for the investors. So you have a lot of investors saying, oh, I invested in this startup way back in 2009, in 2012, in 2015, and I haven't seen anything. Of course, they've been on the news, Forbes, BBC, CNN, but we want the return financially. Yeah, that has held back a couple because there are some game studios that have raised up to, $5 million, $10 million. But this is not among the new wave of studios. These are studios that have spent like more than a decade. Most of them have spent more than a decade, and they're kind of like the big guys, right? These are the things that have happened in this space. We're looking to bridge that gap. We're looking to get people to, understand what it's like investing in the sector, understand what it's like working with the stakeholders, because games are very unique in the fact that you can build long-lasting IP as opposed to many other forms of medium. Um, and what most people don't also understand, both on the creator side and on the business people side, is really IP. That's something I don't think Africa as a continent has chiefly been able to understand and harness, right? Because DC and Marvel today is built on IP that was created 20, 50 years ago. Yeah. And on the African continent, because there's not a lot of capital to go around locally, a lot of people want quick returns. They are not able to build for long term. So if they're investing, they want it the next 5 years, 10 years, they're putting up. But when you look at things like games, it's a number game. You need to build so many to get better at building, to find what your audience really love. You look at Rovio, you look at King, those games, Angry Birds, Candy Crush, that was not the first games they built. But those are the games they are known for. And that's the beauty of the games industry. And that's the opportunity people are missing out on. You build, you build, you build, you find your hit IP, and on that IP, you then just milk it till the end of time. Look at Mario, look at Sonic, look at Angry Birds, look at Candy Crush, right? Just add updates, change skins, create more storylines,
Yeah,
enter
you got business.
yeah.
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 No, that's the thing. That's the thing, because you're so right. In like even Marvel, DC, you see so many remakes in movies. Half of the movies that are coming out, half of the games that are coming out are remakes themselves.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, a lot of people, whether it's media, whether it's games, whether it's TV, it's not that they don't like the new items, but they just do not sell as well as the established IPs.
Yeah.
So gaming has definitely had a problem recently with that. With it's just Call of Duty, FIFA, the Battlefields. But a new IP comes out, people are like it's cool, but they just don't want to take the risk. They want the comfort food. So no, I completely understand. It takes a while to make that IP too, doesn't it? That's the difficult thing, and that's the hard thing for the developers. So maybe just going back onto it, because it was really fascinating how you talked about how there's so many actually foreign investors that are going in, like you said, Google and Microsoft, Steam too. I'd want to maybe compare the cost of developing a game in the continent, in Nigeria where you're working, in Ghana, or just in Africa in general, compared to the West, compared to the Asia, in terms of the infrastructure needed, and also just the general cost. How does it compare? Is it similar, or are there unique costs or unique risks and challenges that these developers have to face?
Okay. Now don't laugh, but I'll say in Africa, cost is your life. Yeah, the cost is Why I say that is, unfortunately and fortunately, yeah, you have to build everything for yourself. Right? You have to build everything from scratch for yourself, and that is terrifying and simply amazing, because if you have the resource, that means you get to shape what the industry looks like.
Mhm.
But the big problem now is the majority of the stakeholders don't have the resource or the exposure. And so there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of mistakes, and mistakes are much more costly. I might not speak of the Asian market very well because they do have their own systems, but in the West, something like gaming is not new to the West. So their systems, their communities, when I speak of publishers, you see, it's a shame we can't say we have a dedicated fund on the continent. Almost every fund, even the Sony Innovation Fund that is that's running a program for the North African region, the North African games industry. Sony is doing something with them over there. Like, everything has to come from outside the continent. Whereas out there, the UK just set up, like, was it a 30 million euros or 60 million euros fund just for the games industry? There are universities that teach games, and there are exchange programs. But yeah, we have to build everything, even down to the knowledge base. Almost everybody on the continent learned online. So there was barely any place you go to and say, oh, I went to study game development. The only known place right now that has professional university courses are South Africa and I believe Tunisia. South Africa, there are universities, teaching game development. Outside those two, we have more like technical vocational centers and some, but they're not so structured. They're not so connected. Because with games, you learn by doing. There's no two ways. So it's not something, oh, I come, I teach you a game, you build a great game. No, it doesn't work that way. There's no shortage
Yeah.
of games out there. So it's really, you have to keep on building, and you also have to have fun while building. And that is very difficult. That's something I do say I want to write an article about, because games are meant to be fun, right? But if you, as the creator, you're not having fun, how do you create fun?
That's so true. Because it's one of those where, do you follow the trends, or do you follow creating something that you would want to play?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of developers that will say, okay, let's just make this get rich quick game,
Uh-huh.
and maybe it's not the best game, but it'll sell a lot. While
Exactly.
others, you talked about new IPs being created and people taking
Exactly.
chances. It could even be an amazing game, but it just doesn't sell, does it?
Yeah.
So it's always tough. Oh no, I found that really interesting. You saying there's no maybe potential funds in Africa that really invest in gaming, and
It-
why I say that is what you said at the start. Africa's one of the youngest. It's the youngest population in terms of continents, and
yeah,
we expect it to grow. It's supposed to be 1/4 of the population, I think, in 2050. So, and a lot of the times you see younger people playing gaming. So there's that untapped potential, isn't it, in terms of how the gaming industry in Africa could grow. That's why
yeah.
I find it so fascinating.
Yeah. And it will grow, and it's growing thanks to several stakeholders who have to put their life on the line to grow this, right? Working collaboratively with other stakeholders. So they have to build everything from scratch. That's why you see studios have to train their own talent. That's why you see organizations like Africacomicade, like the Goethe Institute, like the British Council, Alliance Francaise. They've facilitated a lot of exchange programs, because we are also like figuring things out as we go. And it would be, I mean, nobody's going to come and fix it, but with exchange programs, we can share knowledge, we can learn best practices and see how to leap through the years. So we don't need to spend 30 years to catch up, especially with rapid advancements in technology now, AI and whatnot. We can really catch up if the resources are there. As to human cost, it's definitely more cheaper. And during the COVID era, there was this opportunity for Africa to become the outsourcing market for the games industry. So I know a lot of stakeholders, ourselves included, invested in training talents so that, they can work remotely for global studios, whether it's AAA or AA or indie studios. All right. Um, but that has not been fully explored even to its limit because once more, we have to use the little resources we have to push all of this. And the global demand is looking for specialists. Africa is mainly a generalist market. That is influenced by the socioeconomic conditions the developers are growing in. You don't have money to pay a music director. You're running your studio without any funding. So you have to learn music, you have to learn art, you have to do everything. And when you get burnt out and are in need of cash, if you're going out to look for a job, they're most likely looking for, let's say, a technical artist, and that's all you do. But you know that's not all you do. And because of that, you are unable to go deeply into being the best technical artist out there. And that's also the huge opportunity of the games industry. There's so much careers and fields that are inside. When you look at the credits of people that build a game, in some of these big games like FIFA, like Assassin's Creed, go check it. You're seeing like 200 people, 150 people on one game, right? And now on the continent, you're looking at people building game. It's a team of 3, 4, 5. In fact, sometimes one man studio. And the sad thing is they're going to be judged and compared with global studios. Nobody cares. Nobody, it's not a pity party. People are here to have fun. Yeah. So it's a huge challenge because they have to provide every resource from scratch, but the stakeholders are thriving, they are putting in their efforts. But we look forward to a future where things change because cost of development is cheaper. Of course, most studios don't pay the same amount the Western studios pay, right? In comparison of salaries and the likes. Even when you're looking at doing things, tax, legal stuff, it's not as expensive. But the downside of it is on this continent, you have to, in Nigeria, for example, you're responsible for security, you're responsible for electricity, you're responsible for so many things. All the costs come back to you. Whereas out there are tax reliefs, there are incentives, there are grants to uplift you. Yeah.
For sure. No, for sure. There's so many different aspects that you don't really take into account. And it's like you said, you're competing with other major games, and customers don't care. They just want a good game. It's not a pity party, like you said.
Yeah.
So fascinating. But leading on to that, I've got a question I want to ask about cloud gaming then, because that's really taken off in Asia and the West too. For instance, I just bought a PlayStation Portal, but my internet's not good enough, so I can barely use it. But I think the question I wanted to ask is, you talk about people maybe using more mobiles and even handheld devices.
Yeah.
Could you ever see part where this real cloud gaming that a lot of these bigger companies use, could you ever see that maybe lifting off in Africa, given the amount of mobile gaming that's being used across Nigeria, across Kenya and South Africa, like you said?
Yeah. What do I say? There's definitely a market for that as well. But we need to the African video games industry is deeply affected by Africa's socio-economic environment. So this industry would have been even much more exciting to external stakeholders if the economy of most African countries was stable or good, right? If I can put it that way. So I'm talking disposable income in this respect. So do people want to play games online? I mean, more Africans than ever. Mobile penetration, internet penetration is higher than ever. And they're spending time on TikTok more than ever, right? People are consuming content on YouTube. In the movie industry, the best, fastest, easiest pathway for distribution is YouTube right now. So it shows you people are spending time online. So it would be insane to not see the opportunity. for cloud gaming in this respect. It will be insane because I've also moved into schools, I've gone into events and I've seen kids playing games on platforms like Poki, which is an online gaming platform, and they're there, they are chatting, they're interacting and all. The only issue I will put forward right now is the number of people who are able to partake in this is small compared to the total population, right? So
Mm.
that huge,
No, but that's
yeah,
oh,
yeah. So that huge chunk of the population that is not already into it, they want to, but socioeconomic factors like access to hardware, access to internet, access to electricity is holding them back. So that is also why on the continent, you see a lot of people say, oh, since you're building games, you should tell African stories. But from the business perspective, you have to understand your market. Is Africa the next frontier? 100%, right? But it's a growing market. And as a business, if you want to stay sustainable, and especially in the games industry, games are global. I don't think there's any publisher going out there to say, well, I'm building a game just for America. No, they know that it suits the American audience, but the global ecosystem, they enjoy it. And in cases where the global ecosystem cannot enjoy it, games is one of the biggest part of the creative industry that has what we call localization. So games that are published to the Asian market, for example, they get localized. They are certain clothing styles, certain language, certain colors that change just because you want to publish in the Asian market. And in the value chain, there are people that are called, they provide localization services. So as an African stakeholder, you have to think global as well. Is the opportunity there? Is the potential there? Very, very much. I strongly believe Africa is where everyone would want to be by 2030, 2050. But it hugely depends on the disposable income. That is still what makes the US very favorable market. Um, the people are spenders, and then they have facilities that enable them to spend, even when they don't have money. See, people get iPhones on credits and all, they get credit facilities. There's not a lot of that on the African continent. Africa is cash, right? Yeah, so that is what is holding the market down. But a lot of people are playing games online. Look at Call of Duty Mobile. That's like one of the biggest. We have one of the biggest communities out there globally that makes a lot of noise on TikTok and the likes. So the potential is there. We just hope for better socioeconomic factors so that they can also spend. And then we see a lot more value from that.
no, no, excellent, excellent. It's like you said, that potential is so strong. That's why I always ask. So unfortunately, it does depend on disposable income. Gaming is expensive a lot of the time when it comes to buying new games or having sometimes you have to upgrade your phone, and make sure you have the right device. And when it adds up, it becomes quite a bit of money for the average person. So
Yeah.
that's why it's easier to do it in America and the West. Well, maybe just I've got one last question on gaming, and if we do have enough time, maybe we'll touch on some other things in just a startup space. I'd love if possible, if you could maybe give a success story for one of the gaming developers you've helped, in terms of them growing or in terms of them networking and finding the right people that's boosted their game, or even just the help you've helped them in terms of developing the game.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. What we built in the last 6 years is a Pan-African network, right? And through that, we channel opportunities directly and indirectly. Directly, we've distributed over $150,000 in prototype grants to the ecosystem. We've done that through hackathons. We've done that through our ARC pitch competition. So we started off like the first pitch competition for game studio founders, where they are not just submitting their pitch decks or their ideas, but we're actually asking them to pitch like startup founders, because you need to learn how to tell your story. You need to know how to sell your vision. And so we have a pre-accelerator where they come in, they learn everything about the business of gaming. They create their pitch decks, they do their financials, they come up with their demos, and then they pitch for support. And after that, we connect them to several opportunities. From our very first game jam in 2020, in the heart of the pandemic, um, studios like Dimension 11 Studios, which is creating Legends of Orisha. That's a game everyone is really excited about. You should check it out. Legends of Orisha by Dimension 11. It's a PC game. Um, that studio was formed from our very first game jam competition, like a hackathon for game developers. And over the years, through our programs, we've had several studios come in to be a part of the program. And, they've, the biggest change that we've created, it's not just the networking and all, it's the psychological change of them realizing that, oh, this really is a business. Oh, I can actually do way more than I am. We've had studios go into exchange programs where we had last year, we had a Nigerian game studio, Juju Games, go into the Rabbit residency in Germany. And there are just like 6 studios or so from across the world. The Nigerian studio was the only one representing Africa, and they won the pitch competition there. That was mind-blowing at Games Ground. And it came with some funding as well. We've seen studios like The In Between by VCD, a very young lad, um, go on to win competitions, get spotlighted. They won the Game Devs of Color grant as well, which was really amazing, amongst others. We've seen Deluxe Creation go on to do amazing stuff. Recently, Tossed Down by Fair got acquired, got published by Acclaim, a well-known publisher in the video games industry, right? And even on the other side, we've seen so many studios come together to do amazing stuff. We've seen people try out co-production to see how it goes. There are other stakeholders like Spielfabric that facilitate co-production between African and European markets. So these are very good examples of what has happened. We have so many amazing studios coming out. Of course, not everyone gets to succeed, but then it's part of the process. And the fact that, like I would say, the biggest shift has been them seeing what they do as a business and approaching it from a business perspective, having to start signing co-founder agreements with their studio, their co-founders and all, having to have legal contracts. That has been one of the biggest shifts. And now I'm hearing studios ask for $800,000 to build a game when when 5 years back, when I asked them, they'll be like, oh, if I can see just $1,000, I'll be fine. But now they understand costs. Now they understand process. And that mental shift is really amazing. It shows that it's the real development. Now they are LinkedIn, they are posting, they are engaging more verbally on Twitter, sharing their experiences. I know a studio, Dash Studio, that has its own, investor updates coming out monthly. That is crazy. That is something that I never saw before. Keeping, that business side, communication side, marketing side, getting covered beyond just the technical side of building is awesome. And that I would say is the biggest win we have. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, that and anytime someone is helping another person when it comes to financial literacy is so important. It's like you said, 1,000 pounds is great, but how long would that take you, or how much would that take you to the next stage? So, no, good, very good on you for doing that. My last question, I'll say this, I'll do this question, then we can finish up. When it comes to you're selecting developers to maybe work with, because I'm sure now there's quite a number of businesses coming to you and developers coming to you. What stands out for you when you are maybe selecting a person to work with or to collaborate with, the developers in general? What are the things that makes them unique?
Yeah. Ooh, that's an exciting one. Yeah. It's a mix. There's a mix of what we look out for, because of the state the market is in, right? On the African continent, we can't necessarily say there's a AAA studio, but then there are definitely studios at different stages, even if a bulk of everyone is still at that indie stage. Yeah, there are some that have more funds than the others. There are some that have more exposure than the others. And with the program we create, we've tried to, in the last few years, we've tried to ensure that we've brought everyone from that zero beginner stage to like intermediate, where even if they don't have the financial resources, they have some form of structure to back up what they are doing. So some of the key things we're looking at right now, of course, definitely the first thing is the game, because this is the business of gaming. Yeah. Or what project are they building? What does their prototype or vertical slice look like? Is it fun to play? That is very key. We get a lot of pressure to push the African narrative in games, but that doesn't move us at all because we know at the end of the day, the Africans would clamor for more representation, but from also the business side, would they pay, right? Because every stakeholder coming on board to stay sustainable needs to have a full cycle of, getting revenue, generating revenue from what you do so you can scale. So the game is the key thing. Is it fun? Is it appealing to a large audience? That is one key thing. The next thing is also the team, right? We're setting up systems to ensure that the team doesn't really hold a lot of the process back because we're still a young industry, but we also want to see how committed, dedicated, and capable the team members are. Are they able to follow through with this idea? Because the games industry is a sexy industry. When you say, "Oh, I'm a game developer," everybody's like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. That's fun." But the reality on ground is it's a very tough, crazy industry. And once you realize that, unlike the tech industry, you can't switch, you can just drop this startup and jump and start other things. That it doesn't increase your chance. And there's not that mobility in the games industry. If you're in, you can get stuck if you don't grow. And if you want to force yourself out, it might be to pivot to an entire different sector altogether. So we look at the game, we look at the team and their vision. Those are two key things we look at now. We believe with that, um, as long as those things are there, as long as they can build a game that is fun, even if they don't, even if that game is not their hit game, the likelihood of them building something fun again is higher, right? And the last thing that is something we are adding now that has become very important, we've realized, is the ability to finish a game. Yeah, apparently a lot of people start games, they don't know how to scope and they keep on building and building and the game never releases. So the ability to finish a game and publish it and move on to the next stage is something new we're now taking more serious than ever. Yeah.
No, excellent, excellent. That's it's really interesting, that endpoint where I said where you said games that need to be finished, because there's so many games out that I was so interested in, or so many games that were trying to be released, then they'll get cancelled.
Yeah.
Creating a game is probably one of the hardest things that you can do in media. That's what I've really realized. So the fact that you can help some developers do that is fantastic, and the background towards it is also really interesting. But Oscar, I'll finish there. Really fascinating talk. Probably one of my more unique conversations I've had in the Afribond session. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank
I
you.
really hope the audience has a better understanding of the gaming landscape in Africa. And yeah, no problem. So just to finish off, is there anything that you'd like to plug? Obviously, you've got your fingers in a few different areas. Any other parts that you'd like to talk about before we finish off?
Well, a key thing is I'd like to just let everyone know there is a market. A lot of people always think this is a new industry. No, it's not new. There are stakeholders that have spent 20 years, 30 years in this sector building amazing stuff, be it games, animation, comics, and XR. To increase the visibility of the sector, at our end, we'll be releasing an industry report and a documentary by the first quarter of next year. So you can get to see the amazing work that is ongoing. There are communities, there are conventions spanning up to 8 years running. Yeah, even our convention, the Gamerton, ran for 6 years. So there are businesses that are 15 years old, 20 years old in this space. It's not a new sector. Of course, the business of gaming is different from that of regular startups. So And it's a huge opportunity. So the race from our end is to ensure that, you see, those early creators, they get the opportunity to build and create, so that Africa does not once more just become consumers, because we're already huge consumers of games. We play games. Everybody plays games. Whether be it board games or mobile games or PC games, we play games. And Africa has a huge opportunity to be a part of this market. For context, just about 3% of the games, of the revenue made from the African games industry, belongs to African game creators. And the African games industry is about $1.8 billion currently. So we don't even have up to 3% of that coming back to the local ecosystem. So if the market is $1.8 billion currently, that shows you, that's $1 billion industry we are not looking at. And look into it. We're here to guide you. Look into it.
100%. There's so much potential in it. That's why I was so fascinated in there. There's money to be made, as people say. But Oscar, no, thank you for all of that, and I'm sure we can catch up again soon, because this industry seems like it's going to be growing and changing very drastically.
Yep, definitely. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Oscar. Thank you.
Yep.
It was great speaking with Oscar, and if you're interested in any of the work that he does, I'd first type Africomicade on Google, but also his website africomicade.org that shows all of the hackathons and also events that he's doing. I've also put descriptions in the YouTube and Spotify and other podcasting platform links. But that's all from us. We'll be back very soon. But in the meantime, take care.